As far as your service being worth the investment, yes, absolutely. If I had to do it again, I would do it exactly the same way. There's no hesitation of me doing this again in case I were to buy another airplane or to make the recommendation, because I think anybody who's interested in buying an airplane for business purpose, the best decision you can make is to actually use your services for many reasons. Obviously, we want to be able to get the exemption, but it's also to make sure that it's done right. I think that's the bigger thing for me, is that it's done right. We are now in a place where it's like, yeah, that's one less thing for me to worry about. So my name is George Cardusely. I run a company called Manage IT. It's a limited liability corporation. We are an IT company, so we basically do information technology management projects and things like that. And I cover most of California, Arizona, and Nevada. And a lot of times we have to be on site at customer sites, and it just makes more sense for us to travel using our own airplane, because we're not limited to what the airlines do with us. Most of the time we find ourselves at small airports where there may or may not be service. So it just makes more sense to be able to fly in ourselves. And then when we're done, we fly back. I found out about Aero Marine through a friend of mine. I was speaking to him about purchasing my airplane. He has basically the same make and model as my airplane. And as I was getting close to that decision, I had asked him about the upsides and downsides of owning an airplane. This is the first airplane I've ever known. And honestly, a lot of times we're very naive. We go into it and say, yeah, it's just another vehicle. It's like owning a car, where in fact it's not. There's a lot of legal ramifications that pertain to it, especially if you're using it for business. So I spoke with him, and he had actually gone through your service. And one of the things he told me, he says, yeah, you could probably figure out how to do this yourself, but it's going to take you forever to do that. And I said, no, I specialize in running my business. I would prefer to engage with some professionals who know the ins and outs. And that way, it gets done, and it gets done right. The biggest challenges in navigating the tax exemption process is that there's so much to know that I don't know. And the fact is that I don't know what I don't know. I could spend a year trying to figure this out. It would take a lot of time for me to go through all the regulations and things like that. I'm also of the mindset when it comes to any regulatory body, it makes more sense to make sure that everything's done right. And that way you don't have to worry about any headaches down the line. And I've always been in the mindset is that everybody has their expertise. I'm an expert in information technology. People should hire me if they want it to be done right in a secure way. The same way I would work with someone who understands the tax exemptions and who can help me navigate through that. And honestly, that all my concerns and fears were completely dispelled because I worked with Julie, and Julie was able to walk me through the process every step of the way. So the transition from the sales rep to Julie was very seamless. She reached out to me very quickly, and we had set up a phone call that we went through and talked about the specifics. How often will I be flying? The limitations, because one of the limitations in my case is that I had to get some transition training to be able to use the airplane. So I wasn't able to just use the airplane immediately. So to factor all of these in, but also to understand really who are my customers, why will I be flying, those types of choices, but also how to keep track of the things that I need to track. And honestly, if you treat an airplane like a company car, then you're going to be wrong. Typically, I use a car for business purpose and I track miles and things like that. But that's very different from trying to get a tax exemption on an airplane because it's treated very differently. In terms of complexity of the process, Julie simplified it. There's been a few times where I've had to schedule a call with her because if I didn't understand how to track something. She was very thorough. Whenever I submitted the monthly report, she would review it, and within a very short time frame, she would get back to me and ask other questions. So if I left something out, she would be able to get back to me quickly and say, we need to add this, we need to add the other thing. So that's the thing that, to me, the best part about this engagement was really, it could have been very complicated, but it wasn't because I had an advocate. So Julie was essentially my advocate walking me through the process, and that made it very easy. As far as your service being worth the investment, yes, absolutely. If I had to do it again, I would do it exactly the same way. There's no hesitation of me doing this again in case I were to buy another airplane, or to make the recommendation, because I think anybody who's interested in buying an airplane for business purpose, the best decision you can make is to actually use your services for many reasons. Obviously, we want to be able to get the exemption, but it's also to make sure that it's done right. I think that's the bigger thing for me, is that it's done right. We are now in a place where it's like, yeah, that's one less thing for me to worry about. So when I got the final paperwork that we had succeeded with getting the exemption, I mean, there was an elation. There was a sense of relief that, and it does get pretty expensive if we had to pay the taxes on that. So there was definitely a sense of relief, but there's also a sense of gratification that felt, yeah, we went through the process. The process in the beginning seemed daunting, but I had a partner, an advocate who walked me through it. And to be able to come to that finished product of being able to say, yeah, you got the exemption, you don't owe the taxes, and basically it's done. And now we can move on to bigger and better things. So as far as your company versus others, I actually honestly did not look at others. The friend that made the referral is a trusted friend. And honestly, when I was thinking about getting the airplane, really, I had no idea of what would be ahead. So he made the recommendation, and he made the recommendation very sternly, to say the least. He was very emphatic that it's something that would come back and would haunt me if I didn't do it right. And he also had such a wonderful experience to the point where I thought, it doesn't make sense for me to shop around. Something like this, you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. And he had a wonderful experience, and I felt comfortable in just going ahead and making the call. If I met someone who's going through the same process and they have some hesitation, I would simply explain to them that my time should be spent on running a business. My time should be spent on getting new clients and making care of the clients that I have. Just as I would expect my clients to use me because I'm the subject matter expert when it comes to technology, well, you guys are the subject matter expert when it comes to this. And this is the thing, somebody could spend a year trying to learn what you guys know, or you can just engage with someone and have an advocate, someone who walks you through the process. To me, it's a no-brainer. The time that I would have spent would have been incredibly costly in terms of lost opportunities versus saying, yeah, I have a partner, an advocate, someone who can walk me through it. And honestly, it's worth every penny. To me, it is a no-brainer.